would like to tell you a personal story of how I accidentally discovered the radical power the mind can have over the body and how it changed my life forever. So it was in 1986 at the world-famous TEDxUCLASalon Academy of Martial Arts here in Marina Del Rey, where I took my very first beginner's class in the Japanese mixed martial art of boxing. Now, I'd studied martial arts for over 20 years, but I specialized in punching and kicking. And with the revolutionary impact of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, we in the martial arts world had to accept that fighting on the ground was a reality of combat. And I wanted to be trained in reality. But my personal reality was that I grew up kind of shy and prone to anxiety and prone to fear kind of person. And so for me, the holy grail was to be under a stressful condition, like the chaos of combat, and be able to slip into the zone, be able to find that elusive, mythical place called flow. And up until this point, I'd never experienced it. So this is my path. So the class started very slowly, lots of stretching, lots of warm-ups, very rudimentary punching and kicking drills. And it took a long time. I remember thinking to myself, I need to get to the next level class. It's a little too easy. And then without warning, bags of headgear and fighting gloves were spilled onto the mat. We were assigned opponents and bout numbers. My opponent was a little shorter than me, but much more muscular. And I remember him ignoring my friendly eye contact as we were all asked to sit in a big circle, cross-legged, to form a fighting ring. I wouldn't admit to myself then, but I was a little confused and a bit intimidated. Turns out it was very intuitive. When the fighting started, it was brutal. It was full contact, punching and kicking to the head, body, and legs, sweeps, throws, and takedowns, and once on the mat, joint locks and chokes, all the submission techniques I came to learn, all the submission techniques I did not know. This was not a beginner's class. This was an advanced fighter's class. And although I didn't want to admit it to myself then, I was getting really, really anxious. When our number was called up, my opponent and I went to the middle of the ring, and we knelt down and sat on our heels, as we're accustomed to allow the gloves to be laced up and the headgear to be laced up. I will never forget that feeling. It felt like someone was cinching a noose tight around my neck. My arms and legs felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. There were more butterflies in my stomach than all the painted ladies that have migrated through LA this spring. My heart was a bass drum in my chest. My mouth was full of cotton. My eyes were just blankly staring at the floor. And inside, I was certain I was going to lose, pretty sure I was going to get hurt, and absolutely going to get humiliated. And at the time, I couldn't appreciate the irony. Here I was in search of this mythic flow state, and instead, I was choking on a fight that hadn't even started. So I'm going to pause my story for a moment and talk to you a little bit about flow and the science of flow and why it matters so much to me. So the great psychology researcher, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, defines flow as an actual altered state of consciousness and has really interesting features. One of them is that time seems to slow down and expand and become more spacious. Sensory information becomes more rich and detailed. Expert technique just seems to happen without any effort at all. And what's interesting too is that the mind, the ordinary mind, becomes quiet. All the talking and chattering and judgment disappears. The ordinary self is transcended so you can become one with experience. So you can see why someone like me would want to have a little something like that, right? Well, science shows that there's a path to kind of get to flow. It's not exact, but one of the things we know is that we need to have enough training in our bodies so that our skills are neurologically embodied in the brain and the limbs and torso. So that has to be there first. But then we have to take those skills and embody them in a complex, rich, and dynamic environment that's providing enough challenge that's just outside our skill set. Well, if those are the rich waters for flow, I was drowning in a tsunami. But what does the science show about what happens when we're just out of reach of this level of performance? We usually concentrate more, we focus more, we push harder, we put more muscle into it. I always thought if I ever found myself in that situation, that I would have to try and channel my inner Hulk to smash through the fear and rage on my opponent. Well, research shows that that never works. It's probably why we have all kinds of mythic practices like pre-game rituals and lucky underwear and exotic supplements like powdered yak testes, which apparently is a thing now. So what if the access to flow is not something you do differently? What if it's something that's kind of an undoing? What if it's not more effort, but a kind of effortlessness? What I accidentally discovered that day was that a different state of consciousness, something called mindfulness, is not only the guardian of the mind, but also the gateway to flow. Now, if you haven't heard of mindfulness by now, my advice is for you to drag the rock you're living under a little closer to a better internet connection. But I'm going to keep the definition free for us here so that we can all be on the same page. So as a facilitator of mindfulness here at the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center, and as a psychotherapist in private practice using mindfulness interventions to treat anxiety disorders, I define mindfulness as training something called meta-attention. Meta-attention is not only the ability to attend to an object, information, but also the quality of attention itself. So you have increased body awareness, increased emotional awareness, increased awareness of the mind and your environment and relationships, while developing equanimity and compassion. So it's a whole host of different qualities. Now, mindfulness is one of the key features of the Noble Eightfold Path of Buddhism, but it's also one of the most researched, evidence-based practices in mental health, with research studies going on now at UCLA and places like UC Berkeley and Stanford and Harvard. And while the research is new, and a lot of questions yet to be answered, there's a lot of there. And what I discovered were three particular features of mindfulness on that day. The first is a very granular somatosensory awareness, really deep knowledge of both external sensation and what we call affect or interoception, internal sensation. Really useful if you're trying to understand the language of the body, and especially if there are signals about stress. The second thing is this meta-attention, this ability to not only attend to some object or situation, but attend to the quality of your attention, to increase focus, concentration, clarity, and durability or stability. If you take those two, awareness of the body at a deep level, at high levels of attention, you can upend the roots of distraction. What are the roots of distraction? All the thinking, all the assumptions, all the judgment, all the predictions, all the paralysis by analysis that we can often get stuck in. When you notice that your mind is in that place, and you become aware of it, you can withdraw your attention from the story that your brain is telling you, and bring your attention to your body and sink into the reality of what is actually going on this moment. When you do that, it's kind of like waking up from a dream. In psychology, we call it decentering, sometimes disidentification. Well, for me, it was waking up from my worst nightmare. So there I am, kneeling, cascading a shame spiral of performance anxiety. And what was amazing is that my body decided that, oh, this is a meditation position. It's called Seiza in Zen Buddhism. It's a kneeling meditation position. And without a choice point, meditation began. It began. This was not a strategy to try and deal with my stress. This was not a strategy to try and fight better or prepare for the opponent. It just began. So I turned my attention inward towards this cascading sense of inflammation and disruption and turbulence, but with radical acceptance. Just this here now. No agenda, no trying to control. In fact, it was a complete surrender. And in the twinkling of an eye, as my witness, a transformation happened. There was all this spaciousness. And I would say a wordless kind of knowing descended on me. And it was a kind of a confidence. If I had to give words, it would sound like this. This body is strong and trained. And win or lose, I'm going to honor my teachers in my heart. When I tell you that I stood up a radically different human being, there's absolutely no exaggeration. I didn't have to channel my inner Hulk. I channeled the vision, calm, serene, a mind clear and free of fear. When the signal was given to begin the fight, I took it to my opponent. My footwork was fast and fluid. My combinations were powerful, precise, sharp, and quick. And all he could do was move and cover up. But what was amazing about it is that I wasn't doing it. It was absolutely something that was happening by itself. It was also incredibly absent of aggression. I wasn't angry or trying to hurt him. It was just an expression of knowledge. It was so calm and quiet. I finally felt like the martial artist I was meant to be. This probably lasted for about a minute or so. And then I stepped out of flow because I started getting tired. I was breathing hard and my muscles were burning. And all of a sudden I started trying to assess what was going on. And I thought, why isn't this guy going down? He is just taking all the hits, you know? And then a terrible thought dawned on me. What if he's just toying with me? And then right about then, I remember him kind of rushing in, doing a double underhook bear hug. And I just instinctively put my arm around his neck, posted my leg, and we both dropped to the floor. I splayed out, and I tried to put on a headlock that I had no idea how to make work. But I did my best. And so I was cranking and cranking with every fiber, every muscle of my body, trying to bend his neck into a victory. But he was just hanging out. It was all good for him. I kept on pulling, and kept on pulling, and kept on pulling, and my arms started to feel like molten lava, and pretty soon I couldn't hold it anymore. So he pulled it out, spun 180 degrees, put my elbow into an arm bar, and tapped me out. I was so exhausted, I was lying there spread eagle, I couldn't move my arms or legs. Nothing could move in my body except for my chest heaving like a bellows. Two students had to drag me out of the circle and help take off the gloves and take off my headgear. I spit out my mouthpiece and I just stared up at the ceiling. And I had the biggest smile on my face. Because I had lost that fight summarily. There was no question. I couldn't hurt him, and he took me down when he wanted to and ended the fight. But I was so happy. I was elated. Why? Because I lost to a better fighter. I didn't lose to my fear. Thank you.